Stone type. Music type. Hardcore type. Spicy wings type.
Professor, we're supposed to give them types that make sense for the Pokedex, not the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay. How about dragon type?
That's my lunch, Professor. We can't blame him, because it's cool to think of new Pokemon types that could be added to the existing ones and better represent certain species. But today I wanted to take it a step further. I thought it would be fun to create a brand new Pokemon type chart from scratch, creating efficacies, resistances, and immunities between them without repeating any existing ones and trying to fit all Pokemon. My chart will consist of 17 types, which is a lot, so let's start quickly with Monster type. This type works close to what we know as normal type and is great for creatures that don't match any other type. Because they are usually generic representations of the animals they resemble, this type is more of a wild card to me than the normal type. Since not all Pokemon of this type are that normal, but what they indeed are is monsters. Pocket monsters. As what we might call neutral type, it wouldn't be super effective against any type. It would be weak against Astral because probably would not have much effect on beings that don't follow our logic, and Mineral because its sturdy structures would not take much damage from ordinary attacks. It certainly wouldn't be the best offensive type, but it wouldn't have many weaknesses either. And it has a variety of Pokemon that tend to have good cover, making it the most balanced, but we'll see more about that in the video. So for now, let's continue with Digital type. Wait, is this legal? This type is made up of Pokemon created by human technology. Being programmed to fight gives them tremendous strength, though they suffer when situations call for creative, spontaneous responses that they are not good at. However, some prototypes are so advanced that they can act like any other Pokemon, and can even develop emotions and feelings. Most of the Pokemon here are automatons, although as a type it represents technology in general. The Digital type is strong against Plague for the role of science in curing diseases and its potential to relieve environmental problems. Mineral for the superiority one would expect from a battle between the Digital Age and the Stone Age. And Forest because of the unstoppable advance of cities, human structures, and technology over natural landscapes. Digital is weak against Astral because although we have come a long way, technology is still far from cracking the secrets of the cosmos. Dream for the same reason. The world of dreams remains an enigmatic world for which science has hardly any answers, and would also be useless against angel and demon as a representation of the spiritual world, to which technology has little or nothing to say. Dream type. These rare Pokemon don't stand out for their physical strength or powerful elemental moves. In fact, they're pretty mediocre under normal circumstances, weak and lacking in attack resources. However, they are extremely dangerous. They have mastered the mysterious power of dreams. Being adept at putting opponents to sleep, they become invincible once they enter the dream world. Their power there is beyond anything on the earthly world. Everything that happens to the victim of their trance has consequences in the real world, which makes them fearful. There are plenty of ways to block their techniques and keep them at bay, but don't let your guard down, as the strongest of them are said to not even rely on keeping their opponents asleep, blurring the barrier between reality and illusion with their mere presence. Dream is super effective against Plague because there is nothing healthier and more disease preventing than a good night of sleep. Mage because magic, even allowing incredible things, is nothing compared to the wonders that can be seen in the dream world. And Astral because of mankind's dream of conquering the universe, a driving force that may one day cease to be just a dream. It's not very effective against Marshall, as it's made up of beings of great will and determination that manage to resist awake more than the common Pokemon, neutralizing its strategy. And it's useless against Digital, as robots don't sleep as such, so they cannot be taken to their world and their tricks prove useless. Plague type. A name that doesn't quite convince me, but it's the closest I've found to the concept I'm trying to express. Gathers Pokemon based on pollution, disease, and decay, going beyond the classic poison type, further expanding its meaning. Masters of residual damage, these Pokemon can also parasitize enemies and use their own powers. Plague is super effective against Sea because of the disaster pollution causes on it. Forest because of the pests that ruin vegetation and crops. And Marshall because even the most determined determined warrior is vulnerable to disease. It's weak against Mage because if these Pokemon were to fall ill, they would use their knowledge and skills to create potions or learn healing spells, and useless against Angel and Demon, non-mortal beings who therefore have nothing to fear from hunger, disease, and the threats the type represents. Sound Type. This is undoubtedly the most likely to be truly added to the official series, with already tons of creatures and moves that line up with it, and even a category of its own attacks. But in our particular world where conventional types don't exist, it makes even more sense. All Pokemon of this type use sound waves for battle in different ways, whether it's music to fool opponents, devastating sonic blasts, or harsh sounds that have different effects on their opponents. Some even develop unique techniques like mimicking other Pokemon's sounds or voices to confuse their opponents and gain an advantage or escape. Sound is super effective against Dream, as it naturally wakes up Pokemon, nullifying their powers. Forest, because noise pollution has harmful effects on numerous species and disturbs ecosystems. Digital, because sonic waves are one of the best ways to penetrate their circuits and ruin their functioning. And Sea, because sound propagates faster in water. It would be useless against Astral because in outer space, sound propagation is not possible, as the empty space lacks molecules that can transmit their movement from one to another. Mage Type. Another one that doesn't sound so far-fetched. This goes without saying as it consists of Pokemon that specialize in spells, incantations, and powerful magic to control the elements. It's also the secondary type of Pokemon created by magic, creatures with a natural resistance to elemental powers, but since they generally ignore their bodies, they are weak in this regard. The Mage type is super effective against Digital, as magic is able to reach places that technology can't even dream of for now. Plague by white magic, capable of curing any disease, and Demon, because the most powerful mages can confront and seal evil spirits. It's not very effective against Mage itself because, as I said before, they have a natural resistance to the elements and most spells. Dream because, once again, the most spectacular spell pales before the wonders of the dream world. And Mineral because of gemstones and their properties which grant the wearer with resistance and protection to magic. Astral Type. A type composed of mysterious Pokemon from other worlds. Some of their abilities are mysteries that even science cannot explain. They seem to be invulnerable to many effective moves against terrestrial Pokemon while being weak to seemingly innocuous things. Their attacks are also totally unpredictable. Ignoring the logic of our planet, they are often fearsome because their true purpose among us is unknown, though some fearless trainers have dared to train them, proving that they too can feel love and be powerful allies. The Astral Type is super effective against Digital, because if an alien race were to arrive on our world, it would be an indication that they have infinitely superior technology to us, which would almost certainly be bad news. Forest, monster, and sea because the conditions of outer space would kill within minutes almost any animal, plant, or marine organism that was exposed to it. Fear because unknown beings naturally produce uneasiness and concern. And it's useless against Mineral because the agents that cause rocks to erode are practically non-existent in space, being a beneficial environment for them. Mineral Type. Pokemon made from rocks, minerals, and combinations of these. This makes them tough and durable, although some are very fragile, precisely because of this composition. Their attacks are mostly physical, powerful yet predictable, though a small percentage of them have magical properties and abilities. Mineral Type is super effective against Sky, with birds being vulnerable to its projectiles. Demon, due to the cliche of the malevolent spirit sealed in a stone structure. Not very effective against Sea, as projectiles in general are almost useless underwater. And also against Digital, because although robots can take structural damage from their attacks, once again the outcome of a clash of Stone Age weapons against Digital ones would be predictable. Light Type. Pokemon of this type use luminous energy in a variety of ways in battle. They receive their power from different light sources and are usually fast and energetic. Light Type is super effective against Dream, as intense light hinders sleep, nullifying its powers. Astral because light travels through space at full speed, and because of its properties, it works the same way throughout the universe, so it's one of the few things that Pokemon from other universes are just as vulnerable to as those from this one. Sound, because being both based on speed, the speed of light is much faster, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. And demon, because they are beings that thrive best in darkness. It's not very effective against mage, as they are good at absorbing it and disabling its powers, and useless against mineral as their bodies reflect light, making them invulnerable to its movements. Sky type. This type is a group of all the Pokémon that inhabit the skies. It differs from flying type in that bugs and other Pokémon that can fly are not of this type, as it's not their natural environment. Otherwise, it's very similar in stats, using the height and high speeds they reach in flight to take advantage of their opponents. Sky type is super effective against sea because of the large number of birds that prey on fish, which is practically never the case the other way around. Forest, for the same reason, is a free buffet for the more dominant birds, and fear because of the fear of heights. It's, however, weak against angel and demon, as they are even more skilled at flying, evading their techniques, and counterattacking. Martial type. It's made up of martial artists from different disciplines. Strengthening body, mind, and spirit in equal parts, honor precedes their powerful techniques, and therein lies its difference with fighting type, as it would be exclusive to precisely martial artists, excluding Pokémon that focus more on brute force without such a refined style. Despite these differences, they work very similarly in terms of effectiveness. Martial type is super effective against monster because of the ideal of a warrior so powerful that it's able to stand up to a fearsome beast. Mage. Because of what we were talking about before, that they are skilled in the use of magic but neglect their body and can be destroyed in seconds by a skilled fighter. And fear, because of the mental tools that a martial artist develops in order to overcome their fears and insecurities. Martial is not very effective against Sky for the same reasons that fighting is weak against flying. No matter how much they train, they will never be able to fly, and the higher position always has an advantage in a fight. And C, because underwater movement is difficult and martial arts lose effectiveness. Fear type. Pokémon of this type are based on phobias, fears deeply rooted in the psyche, and which they can rise up in an enemy to mentally damage them, stun them, and make them vulnerable to attack. The greater the fears of the opponent, the more damage it can take, and the more it will be at their mercy. I think that beyond the already existing Pokémon that could fit into this category, it would be amazing to see new ones that could fall into this category with different fears that would materialize in quite original powers. This type would be super effective against Dream because of nightmares and how much they can affect the victim, destroying their good sleep habits. Forest, because the creatures of this tend to be fearful, which makes them especially vulnerable to its powers. Not very effective against Martial because, as we said, despite feeling fear like the rest, Martial Pokemon are not intimidated by it and don't let it affect and paralyze them. Demon, because they tend to be reckless Pokemon unafraid to take damage if it means accomplishing their goals. And useless against Digital, as fear is not something automatons are capable of feeling. I'm seeing that the fact of being robots and not being able to feel is helping them a lot. But, well, it's not like I'm looking to make a balanced table. C-type. Basically the water type with another name. I've tried to avoid making repeated types like this, but there's no way to get around a category that groups aquatic Pokemon, so it is what it is. The difference is that not all of them would base their moves on water. Some simply have that habitat. River, pond, and swamp Pokemon would also fall into the category, even if the name isn't quite accurate and rigorous with them. C-type is super effective against Digital because water leaks into the electronic circuits of this Pokemon, ruining them. Mineral, because water erodes and deteriorates them. And heat, because water extinguishes fire. It's weak against forest because water feeds the plants. And dream, because the sound of ocean waves and rain is soothing and helps some people fall asleep. Heat type. Pokemon of this type are able to create a combustion within themselves and launch powerful igneous attacks, or else they are adapted to live in high temperatures and water scarcity. Heat type is super effective against sea because high temperatures evaporate water, and I think that it's an interesting twist, that they are strong against each other. Dream, because it's more difficult to sleep in high temperatures. Digital, because fire melts the metal that their bodies, and forest, because of the destruction that forest fires create on its flora and fauna. Heat is weak against Martial, because its Pokemon manage to maintain concentration in inclement temperatures and also frequent terrible trainings in which they subject their body to extreme conditions. Astral, because beings from outer space would be adapted to extreme temperatures. Demon, because they feel at home surrounded by fire. And useless against light, not ceasing to be the fire a source of light that would increase their powers. Forest Type. This type is my attempt to bring together both plants and creatures that don't fit in Plague and until now were left apart. It would bring together Pokemon of the most different types, all having in common that habitat including fauna and flora. They are specialists in using natural resources and taking advantage of their environment in the most efficient way possible. Forest Type is super effective against Mineral because of how plants are able to grow through rocks, destroying them in the process. Digital, because when abandoned, the machines and structures of civilization are progressively broken by nature, which reclaims what is its own. Plague, because of the natural medicines that can be found in the forest, capable of healing diseases caused by them. It would not be effective against Dream, because as with C-Type, the sounds of the forest are considered relaxing and help to fall asleep, increasing its powers. And useless against heat, since a plant that tried to face fire would probably only feed and increase it. Angel Type, Pokemon that were born with the gift of kindness and evolved to help others. Thus, most of them would become healing specialists, selflessly helping anyone in need, even in the wild, sometimes even exposing themselves to danger. However, some would take a different path and approach to try to fight for the good, becoming extremely strong in the face of such a task and reason. They tend to be overprotective when their bonds with other Pokemon or their trainers are strong, not hesitating to give their life for them if necessary. Angel is super effective against Plague, being experts in healing tasks. Sky, as the angels inhabit it and move through it with greater grace than the rest of its inhabitants. Demon, being their definitive rival and the only ones who can face them, and would be useless against Digital because their machines are alien to any spirituality. And finally, Demon Type. Beings full of hatred and immersed in darkness, extremely aggressive and bloodthirsty in combat. What differentiates them from Dark Type, evil in Japanese, is that this label is equivalent to the vision of humans towards them. By their behavior and nature, they are considered to be evil beings, but often they are not, and this responds to simple survival or misinterpretations. The Demon Type, on the other hand, does carry inherently some kind of evil in a wide spectrum, from mischievous Pokemon with malicious attitudes to pure hatred and resentment. This makes them very dangerous and ruthless Pokemon. It's super effective against Angel, natural enemies in constant fight, and Light, because the stronger the light, the darker and more powerful the shadow it casts. Guys, I think I can take some poetic license at this point in the video. So, it would be something like that. Once again, my goal was a chart as original and different from the official as possible, always trying that all or almost all the Pokemon fit in it if possible, and that interactions between the types would be interesting and more or less coherent. I haven't paid much attention to it being balanced and competitively viable, so it would be interesting to see which of these types would be the most dominant, which Pokemon would get better, which would get worse, which types would be the starters if we want to maintain a type triangle. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun imagining all this, and I hope you've had fun watching it too. As a new YouTuber, it can be tough to get started and grow your channel, but with the support of viewers like you, it's possible. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. By doing so, you'll be the first to know about my new videos, and you'll be helping me to grow the community. I really appreciate your support, and I can't wait to bring you even more content. Thanks for being a part of my journey.